Thanks, Mark, and it's great to have some people here. We're starting a little bit late, which gave me the opportunity to have one of these massages and chill out a bit. So thanks all for coming a bit late. As Mark said, I'm David Atwood. We're Prohibition Partners. Prohibition Partners is the leading markets insights and market intelligence company focused on the European market. We're also extending our coverage into Latin America and Oceania. Prohibition Partners is also co-founder of Cannabis Europa, which is a series of conferences focused on policy, science, and investment. The first was in London earlier this year in May, and the next will be in Paris, I think in February. We're backed by European Cannabis Holdings, which is a holding and investment group focused on this space in Europe. Prohibition Partners itself, as I said, is market data and insights. The core product are reports, but due to our sector knowledge in Europe and our network, clients come to us and ask for bespoke consultancy. So we've done, given the early stage of the industry, we sort of really adapt to client needs, largely market intelligence, market deep dives, market entry studies, partnering, matchmaking, all that kind of good stuff. And we've worked from a variety of clients from governments, FMCG, pharma, and some of the big Canadian producers. I'm the director of consultancy. My background is originally a long time ago, is in law, accountancy, tax, but I've worked in other regulated markets such as clean energy and most recently electronic cigarettes, vaping. As I said, the core of our offering are the reports we do, and the European Cannabis Report is now in its third edition. As you do report writing, your learnings increase, you get deeper and deeper, and I think we've got a good handle on the European industry, although open for feedback. But the fourth edition's coming out in December, so they're free to download. So please go on our website and take a look and let us know what you think. Starting from a small base, we've become sort of the go-to people for comment in the industry for Europe. But I'm here to talk about the opportunity itself within Europe. We forecast that by 2028, in the next 10 years, the European cannabis industry will be worth 116 billion euros, which from virtually zero at the moment is a very steep growth curve, but I think it has been seen, such steep growth curves rather, have been seen in other markets such as in individual US states or Canada. Underlying this assumption is that probably most European markets will be medical legal within 5 years and recreational within 10. I'll come on to talk about those in a second. What did I say? 116 billion. That's a big number, but it should be seen in the context of Europe as one of the world's largest economy, or if we look at it at the block, the world's largest economy. And of that 116, we're talking about 55 to medical. So that should be seen in the context of the European healthcare budget of 2.3 trillion. So it's not unachievable numbers. What else we say here? Yes. So, given that Europe's the largest economy in the world, we think the cannabis industry will grow to dwarf other regional markets such as North America, and it will become the biggest legal cannabis market in the world within 10 years. However, there's always a but. This is a complex and challenging region, not only through difference of language, difference of regulatory systems, many different cultural values, different attitudes from patients, different attitudes from doctors. So there's a challenge to scaling within this market, and we believe that the key to scaling will be to know when and where to deploy resources in different markets that are moving at different speeds. And when I talk about different markets, not only national markets, some of the bigger countries are divided into Germany, Länder, Spain, provinces, all with their different attitudes. So it's knowing when and where to approach that market. to realize the potential growth. So firstly, before I jump in to talk about how we look at the market, let me talk about some of the categories which we are evolving and changing. So medical cannabis, by that I mean THC-containing medicines prescribed by a doctor. In addition, CBD as a consumer product in a wellness category. Recreational cannabis, I think that's sort of fairly obvious, adult use market there. And industrial cannabis, some of the other good stuff that comes off the hemp plant, so insulation, hemp proteins, or the non-psychoactive compound part. Now, the point of this map is to show the difference in regulatory attitudes, legislative attitudes to medical cannabis. And it's changing. It's changing very rapidly. If we'd put this up a year ago, it would have had a very different color base. The European regulatory landscape changes so quickly. At the beginning of the year, I think there were 10 markets where medical cannabis was legal. Now we're at 16. To pick out two, and not only because I'm a Brit, but the UK. At the beginning of the year, the UK government was very against, no. When we had the Cannabis Europa conference in London, we had some parliamentarians there, cross-party parliamentarians, and the policymakers were saying, yeah, you know, sort of at least a year, medium-term legislation in the UK. A couple of high-profile media cases of young children that needed epilepsy medicine meant that the government scrambled to put together a committee on it before the summer, and just 2 weeks ago announced that from the 1st of October, a special register of doctors will be allowed to prescribe cannabis-based medicines, something no one expected 6 months ago. France, another country that's been very anti-cannabis on both levels, recreational and medical, has also put together a parliamentary committee to look at potential use of cannabis as a medicine. So it's a rapidly changing environment at a medical level. More slow will be recreational. Europe doesn't have the cannabis culture that the US does, so it doesn't necessarily have that groundswell of public pressure. Also, European governments, I think, have been slightly different attitude to it, perhaps more permissive, which allows a sort of an escape valve for the public pressure. If we're expecting all markets to be legal for medical within 5 years, then I think populations will start to look at this product, this herb, which is legal for medical, and they'll look across the ocean and they'll see US states. I don't know what the federal position will be, but they'll see US states where people are consuming on a recreational basis. They'll look to Canada, and the public will put pressure on their legislators to do something about it in a European context. And we're already seeing rumblings in Spain, where just last week the sort of left-wing populist party Podemos were putting stuff to the Spanish Parliament. And at a European level, this is in relation to medical cannabis. At a European level, the European Parliament has put together a motion. Now, this will be non-binding. The intention is to put pressure on the European Commission to move forward scientific research. But the important thing is this is signed by it's got cross-party support at a European level, and we see it as the first step on a long path to European cannabis legislation. So the value of the new market. I mean, this slide is really talk about potential. We heard from someone a lot more qualified than I am to talk about the potential of the plant for healing. I hear Professor Mike Barnes from the University of Newcastle saying the cannabis is now legal for medical purposes in 44 countries. I think that's probably out of date now, around the world, and this number is increasing month by month. It's the most exciting medical development of the early 21st century. We know this, we heard this yesterday, but I think we've got to remember that the endocannabinoid system was only discovered in the very recent past. And medical research to date has been limited due to social taboos, legislative practice. I mean, you can't experiment on THC in the US, I think, unless it's... and the commercial opportunity, because as we know, pharma money follows the commercial opportunity. So with the opening of commercial markets for medical cannabis, I think we'll see money pouring into the sector. And yes, yesterday some of the LPs from Canada were talking about their own research programs. But we'll see big pharma, we'll see universities. And whether or not that increases the number of conditions that cannabis can treat. I mean, look, it's not a miracle drug, but it has enormous potential. But whether or not that research widens the scope of use, it will definitely increase the depth of understanding and how comfortable physicians are with prescribing, which is obviously very good for the potential growth of the industry. We, as I said earlier, are forecasting Europe to have a 55 billion valuation by 2028. That's based on a bottom-up consumption model. We do it on a country-by-country basis. So at a very high level, it's based on the number of adult patients, consumption, price, and, as I say, sort of staggered market growth. But the round number for 2028 we're saying is 55 billion, which is a pretty steep growth curve from now. As in Germany, look, there's too much on this slide for me to go into. This is direct from our report, so as I say, please download it, please have a look. But we're seeing Germany going to be around 8 billion in 2028 for medical. As we heard yesterday, 2017, the new law came in, and that's having teething problems getting going. Licensed production hasn't started in Germany yet. So the German market, again, as with the rest of Europe, it's ahead, but it's really just in its nascent stage. This is the point. So even though the law came in last year, we've seen rapid growth to 2018, but still only around 2% of doctors are prescribing. Back to mention the UK again, I mentioned how quickly the legislation is changing. The UK, whether we count it inside or outside of Europe, which is a whole other discussion, is a developed economy with a large patient base, large population, high spending power, and we're forecasting sort of 9 billion in the UK. But also, there are TV ads in the UK for CBD product. My father, who is a 70-year-old minister in the Church of England, he's got rheumatoid arthritis, and you would think he wouldn't be interested in the slightest. He went to his doctor to ask about the possibility of cannabis-based medicines. So I think the cultural change is already on the way in the UK, and that has been closely followed by the legislative change I mentioned earlier. The investment coming into Europe has already started. We've got, I'm not going to run through all of these, but we've got deals being done in Germany, deals being done in Slovenia, Serbia, Czech Republic, Israel, Poland. The cultivation market is starting. In addition to these acquisitions, there are a lot of Canadian LPs arriving and starting their own production in Europe. So, yeah. Invest in cannabis, it's profitable. Another feature I wanted to mention about Europe, the European market, as it says, just starting. There are, I think, 3 listed companies on the London Stock Exchange. They're really just shells getting going, because the European market's not there, but European investors have local exposure to the Canadian market through dual listings. I think some of these Canadian companies are triple listed, some on the New York Stock Exchange in Canada, and here in Frankfurt as well. And look, you can see the performance is incredible for some of them. Fria 7 times in 3 years, Organigram 4 times, Canopy 4 times, CanTrust 3 times, Aurora 3 times in 2 years. So the the growth of these companies is being driven by A, the Canadian market, but B, the fact they're ahead on the learning curve to access international opportunities. I put this up because I've been talking, when I was talking about regional European deals, that's all about cultivation. But we shouldn't forget that we're building an industry from the bottom up. So the cannabis industry is going to need the whole range of the value chain that other industries such as FMCG or pharma has. So it's going to need distribution networks. It's going to need education of consumers. It's going to be marketing to consumers, education to doctors, greater understanding in research and development, digital media. All of this needs to be constructed from the bottom up. So it's when we're really just at the very beginning. We're at the beginning, but some of the major brands, it is on the horizon of some of the major brands. Drinks companies, rumors of, and I stress, rumors of Coca-Cola and Diageo looking at this. They must. I mean, it's on the horizon. It's happening in Canada. Molson Coors, we heard yesterday, has hooked up with Hexo. Heineken has already introduced a THC-containing beverage in California. Constellation Brands, obviously, with its headline investment there. And Alcanna, which is a Canadian distribution, alcohol distribution company, getting into cannabis distribution as well. So, look, what's the word? The holy grail for drinks companies is a rapid onset, a low dose THC beverage that can mimic the consumption effect of alcohol. As it stands, cannabis through inhalation or ingestion has a different onset profile, onset and length profile. So there's a lot of R&D going into that. Tobacco companies, I think, are dipping a toe into the market. I'll come on to talk about them in a second. Wellness companies, wellness and cosmetics. Holland & Barrett is the UK one, I think probably the UK's largest, one of the UK's largest health store groups. They introduced CBD, I think, over a year ago, and it's flying off the shelves. Cosmetics brands using CBD and cannabis as an ingredient. I'll put some financial companies up here because I think the big blocker in the US, because of the federal problems, was that it was difficult to get banks. The Canadian situation means that some of the financial institutions don't have a problem and are supporting the industry, which clearly access to finance gives a leveraged growth. So what we're seeing is, if you ask someone 10 years ago about cannabis, you sort of see someone rolling up a joint. I've got a little prop. I mean, yeah, if we 10 years ago, this would be what people thought about cannabis, whereas what we're seeing is for sort of highly pharmaceutical based pharma-looking products up there, but integrating across product ranges into edibles, into chocolate. I mean, that's including hemp protein, but also CBD. In adult use markets, we've got THC-containing chocolate, into cosmetics, and will enter into the drinks industry. So it's a massive widening of cannabis across our society. Yeah, I mentioned beauty and lifestyle. Now, and cannabinoids have a beneficial effect on skin, as it says here. So it's got native receptors, cannabinoids. But what's interesting, I think, to date about the marketing of cannabis in the beauty and cosmetics sector, what I think is interesting is that it's actually being used as a marketing tool. So a lot of these projects, that like I get sent links because I'm in the industry. It's like, whoa, look at this product, and you look a bit closely, and all it's got is hemp oil, but it's been marketed as cannabis because the consumer, the broad-based consumer, is open to the category, and I think that's the key to the tipping point. Food and drink, I mentioned. I mean, one of the UK's biggest retail chains has a CBD-containing water on its shelves. So it's becoming widely spread in the food and drink sector. So cannabis is disrupting a wide range of industries, and not just pharma, and not just sitting in a niche of adult use stoners. People are getting tired of sort of, what's the word? People are getting tired of cookie cutter lager beers, and so craft beer popped up, giving people a sort of a new category there. Is cannabis going to be that? Is it going to cannibalize the alcohol industry? I mean, alcohol consumption worldwide is falling. It seems strange to say it in Germany with the sort of the whole beer culture, but millennials, I think, across globally, millennials are drinking less and less alcohol, and so cannabis is disrupting the alcohol industry as well. And we've seen, I mean, what I just mentioned is decline generally, but in adult use markets in the US, we see massive declines in alcohol sales. So alcohol companies are having to react as well, and that provides a great opportunity for the category. Cannabis and tobacco is not just on the very obvious level of a burning leaf of a different type of plant. Tobacco companies are seeing their markets decline over time. More and more people are giving up. So in order to survive, they'll have to adapt. And if you think that tobacco companies have always been in the business of altering mood, I think it's sort of only a natural next step for them to look at a less harmful way of doing that. And already PMI's invested. I think this is a vaporizer technology, so they're not actually touching the plant, but looking at delivery mechanisms for cannabis. That's PMI. Alliance One is a tobacco company and has already invested in Canadian growing of cannabis. The point of this is that this slide is, as I said, it's being integrated into our culture, and so where it's consumed will offer new business opportunities, whether they smoking clubs, clinics, wellness centers, retreats, restaurants. So widening of the base is becoming a mainstream product. Just to wrap up on what we see as specific European trends, it will be medical first, it will be highly regulated, GMP, good manufacturing practice levels, commanding premium prices. And remember that Europe has an aging population. I mentioned my dad, but your average cannabis consumer in the next 10 years will be the older, more medically focused consumer. And yeah, that'll lead to massive patient growth. So that's me. Well, that's me. This is us. Please download our report. As I say, the new one is coming out at the end of the new one for Europe's coming out at the end of the year. Latin America has just come out, and Australia and New Zealand will be coming out soon. Thanks very much.